Something is off about the way this Claressa Shields situation is being reported to you, and I need you to sit with that for a second before we go any further, because the story you have been fed about this AI Remy Ma diss track is not the story. The story you think you know is that some AI-generated song went viral making fun of Claressa Shields' fingernails and her jawline and her supposed hygiene issues, and that is funny, and that is embarrassing, and we can all laugh and move on. That is the surface. That is what the algorithm wants you to see. What is actually happening is that an undisputed world champion boxer, less than 3 weeks out from a title defense at State Farm Arena on August 15th, is losing a public relations war so badly that artificial intelligence, a machine that does not sleep, does not eat, does not train, does not have a promoter, does not have a manager, does not have a stylist, is out-rapping her, out-charisming her, and out-promoting her on her own fight card. And nobody, not one single major outlet, has stopped to ask the question that actually matters here, which is how does a two-time Olympic gold medalist, a woman who calls herself the greatest woman of all time, arrive at the week of her own training camp with more diss tracks aimed at her than she has aimed at anybody else, and with the best one of the bunch being written by a language model? That is not a boxing story. That is not a rap story. That is a career in freefall story with receipts, and when we get to the part where I break down what her promotional team is actually doing versus what a functioning promotional team is supposed to be doing 3 weeks out from a pay-per-view, you are going to understand why the people around her have already started making moves that suggest they know exactly what August 15th is going to look like. Because Claressa Shields is not being dissed. Claressa Shields is being processed. And the machine that is processing her is the one she built with her own 2 hands. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Now let me walk you through where we actually are on the calendar, because context is everything here, and I do not want anybody watching this to be confused about the timeline. It is late July 2026. Claressa Shields, the self-proclaimed GWOT, the greatest woman of all time, the 2-time Olympic gold medalist out of Flint, Michigan, is scheduled to fight Kaye Scott on August 15, 2026, at State Farm Arena in Atlanta, Georgia, on DAZN, for the WBC and WBA Unified Middleweight World Championship. That is under 3 weeks away as I am recording this. 3 weeks. 21 days. The exact same length as the target of this video, which I find kind of poetic. In a normal training camp for a normal fighter with a normal promotional apparatus, the 3-week mark before a pay-per-view is when everything locks in. Media day is done. The final press conference is being prepped. Sparring is tapering. Weight is being managed to the ounce. Every public appearance is calibrated. Every social media post is a piece of fight promotion. Every interview is designed to sell the ticket, sell the stream, sell the story. That is what a champion does 3 weeks out. That is what Kaye Scott, by the way, is doing right now, quietly, in Australia, without any of the noise, without any of the drama, without any of the diss tracks, just showing up to her media obligations and letting her hands do the talking when the bell rings. And that is the first piece of context that I need you to hold in your head as we go through everything else. Because on the other side of this equation, on the Claressa side of this equation, the champion is not selling the fight. The champion is doing makeovers. The champion is dropping diss tracks. The champion is beefing with a lightweight from a different weight class. The champion is beefing with a rap veteran who has been in the game since the champion was in elementary school. The champion is getting clowned by a content creator named Geisha 305. The champion is getting bodied by an AI-generated version of Remy Ma. And the champion is doing all of this instead of the one thing she is actually supposed to be doing, which is preparing for the biggest fight of the second half of her career against Kaye Scott. The stakes here, and I need to lay these out clearly, are massive. Personally, this is Claressa's reputation as an undisputed champion. She has built an entire brand around the GWOT acronym, around being the best, around being untouchable. Culturally, this is women's boxing at a moment when the sport is finally getting pay-per-view money, finally getting real network deals, finally getting the kind of promotional runway that used to be reserved for the men. And systemically, this is about whether the biggest star in the women's sport can be trusted to carry the weight of the moment, because if she cannot, the network conversations that determine what the next generation of female fighters get paid are going to shift, quietly, without ever being announced. This is not just about one fight. This is about who gets to be the face of an entire economy. And right now, 3 weeks out from her own defense, the face of the economy is losing to a chatbot. So the question this video is going to answer, and I promise you we are answering it in full, is a simple one. How did we get here, and what does the person who signed her paychecks do about it now? The surface evidence in this story is everywhere, and I mean everywhere. You cannot open a boxing tab, a hip-hop tab, or a general entertainment tab this week without tripping over a piece of it. Let us start with the most public, most visible, most impossible to miss piece of the puzzle, which is the diss track pileup. In the last several weeks, Claressa Shields has released at least 2 of her own diss records aimed at Alycia Baumgardner, most notably a track called Run Your Mouth, which dropped in late July and was pitched as a direct response to what Claressa has described as months of Baumgardner talking crazy about her. That track, by the way, according to Hot 97's coverage and the surrounding social media reaction, used the Yeah Glow beat by Glorilla, meaning Claressa did not even bring her own production to a fight she picked. She borrowed somebody else's viral hit and rapped over it. That is a detail people are glossing over. The GWOT, the self-proclaimed greatest, the woman who wants you to believe she is a threat in the booth, could not even secure original production for a diss track she initiated. Now, the track dropped, it did what disses do when they are not good, which is nothing, and then within a matter of days, the counterattacks started rolling in from directions Claressa never accounted for. Piece of evidence number 1 on the surface is the Geisha 305 track, the one that everybody has been sending around, the one with the hook about dirty fingernails and barely taking baths. That track is not a top 40 record. It is not going to win a Grammy. But it does not have to. Its entire job is to plant a specific, unshakable, memorable image in the audience's head every single time they see Claressa Shields, and it succeeded on the first listen. The hook is the payload. Dirty fingernails. Barely taking baths. It rhymes. It sticks. And it connects to a piece of real, documented behavior, Claressa clipping her nails in a public gym on camera earlier this year, which is what gives the shot its teeth. This is not a random insult. This is a targeted, evidence-backed jab, and Claressa's own footage supplied the ammunition. Piece of evidence number 2 is the AI Remy Ma track, and this is the one I need to spend real time on because this is the piece that broke the internet this week. Somebody, and we do not know who yet, used a voice cloning model to generate a fake Remy Ma vocal, then paired it with what appears to be AI-generated lyrics, and the result is a diss record that is technically, structurally, and lyrically more sophisticated than anything a human Claressa Shields has released this year. The AI track goes for the jugular. Jawline shots. BBL shots. Endorsement shots. Career shots. Publishing shots. It is a full-spectrum takedown, and the fact that it exists at all is a data point. Somebody, or some collective, cared enough about hurting Claressa Shields to sit down and train a model to do it. That is a level of hostility that does not attach itself to a beloved public figure. That is what happens when the culture has quietly, collectively decided that a person is fair game. Piece of evidence number 3 is the response, or more accurately, the absence of a response, from Alycia Baumgardner. As of this recording, Baumgardner has not dropped a diss track back. Baumgardner has not tweeted a direct clap back. Baumgardner has, according to the reporting, been out here promoting a television project and doing her own thing. And as I have said before on this channel, sometimes no response is a response. When the person you dissed does not even acknowledge the diss existed, that is not because they are afraid, that is because you are not on their level in a way that requires acknowledgement. Piece of evidence number 4, and this is the one that ties the surface layer together, is Claressa's own social media in the last 7 days. Instead of training camp footage, instead of sparring clips, instead of weigh-in prep, instead of any of the standard 3 weeks out fight promotion material, her feed has been dominated by glamour shots, makeover posts, filter-heavy photos, and reactive content aimed at her critics. That is not the timeline of a fighter 3 weeks from a title defense. That is the timeline of a person who is losing the plot in real time, and every single one of us watching it happen has become a witness to a slow-motion career management collapse. And oh, do I have more for you? Because if you thought the surface layer was ugly, wait until we get into what the people inside her circle, the people around her camp, and the people in the broader women's boxing community are actually saying and doing right now behind the scenes. This next part is going to make some of you uncomfortable, and I know the Claressa stans are already in the comments typing angry paragraphs, and I want you to keep typing. Because your engagement is what makes YouTube push this video out to more people who need to hear it. But before you type, watch. Because what I am about to show you is not opinion. This is pattern. This is documented, cross-referenced, source-verified pattern from multiple corners of the industry, and when you see it laid out in one place, you are going to understand why the AI Remy Ma track landed as hard as it did. It landed because it was telling the truth that the culture had already accepted, but had not yet said out loud. And there is one specific detail about the timing of the Geisha 305 diss track, involving a cease and desist letter that Claressa's team allegedly sent, that I promise you is going to blow the roof off this entire situation when we get to it in the next section. Stay with me. Let us go into the cultural layer now, and this is where the story shifts from funny to serious, because when you zoom out and look at the reaction pattern across the culture, you start to see something that is not a series of isolated incidents, but a coordinated collapse of goodwill. Cultural evidence piece number 1 is the Geisha 305 backstory. According to the reporting on Instagram, TikTok, and multiple hip-hop commentary channels, Geisha 305 did not just wake up one morning and decide to write a diss track about a boxer. Geisha 305 was reportedly a content creator who had been putting out commentary about Claressa Shields and Claressa's team, according to Geisha 305's own posts, allegedly sent her a cease and desist letter to try to shut her up. And instead of shutting her up, the cease and desist did what cease and desists always do to independent content creators. It made her louder, it made her angrier, and it made her drop the dirty fingernails record that is now everywhere. That is a self-inflicted wound. That is Claressa's own legal team handing the culture a diss track by trying to suppress speech that would have died on its own in a week. If you do not understand how significant that is, let me put it in perspective for you. In hip-hop, cease and desist letters do not silence critics. They validate them. They tell the audience that the person being criticized is scared. They tell the audience that the criticism landed. And in this case, they told Geisha 305 that she had something worth turning into a record. Cultural evidence piece number 2 is the Remy Ma of it all, and I want to unpack this carefully because it is layered. Remy Ma, the actual Bronx rap veteran, has been publicly annoyed with Claressa Shields for months. According to Vibe's coverage, Remy dropped a shot at Claressa on Connie Diamond's head tap record earlier this year, and the entire premise of that verse was that Claressa is copying Remy's style, her aesthetic, her mood board, without any of the earned credibility. And now, months later, an AI-generated Remy Ma is out here delivering the same message in a longer, meaner, more surgical package. Whoever made that AI track did not pull those bars out of thin air. They pulled those bars out of the collective community understanding that Remy Ma versus Claressa Shields is not really a beef. It is a rap veteran telling a boxing champion to stay in her lane. And the AI is just crystallizing what the culture has already agreed on. Cultural evidence piece number 3 is the women's boxing community response, or lack thereof. Look at who is publicly defending Claressa Shields right now, 3 weeks out from her fight. Look at which other female fighters are amplifying her diss tracks. Look at which promoters are hyping her fight card on their own channels. The silence is deafening. Her own peer group in the sport is treating her like a liability. That is not a good sign for a champion. That is what it looks like when the industry has already begun distancing itself. Cultural evidence piece number 4 is the reaction from the hip-hop commentary ecosystem, the community that I am part of, the community that I am talking to you from right now. Every major hip-hop commentary channel that has weighed in on this situation has come to essentially the same conclusion, which is that Claressa Shields is putting herself in situations she does not have the skill set to win. She is not a rapper. She is a boxer. Rappers who cannot rap get eaten alive in this culture, and it does not matter what your day job is. Now, I want to be fair here, and I want to acknowledge the counterargument, because there is one and it deserves a real response. The counterargument is that Claressa is being unfairly targeted because she is a woman, because she is a dark-skinned woman, because she is from Flint, because she does not fit the mold of what women's sports marketing has historically wanted from its stars, and that her outspokenness is being punished in a way that a male fighter would not be punished. That is a real critique, and I am not going to pretend it does not have merit. But here is where it falls apart in this specific case. The critique would hold if Claressa were being attacked for her boxing, or for her background, or for her looks in the abstract. She is not. She is being attacked for behaviors that she is actively, publicly engaging in on her own timeline, in her own posts, in her own diss tracks, in her own cease and desist letters. This is not a story of an unfairly targeted woman. This is a story of a champion whose choices, over and over and over again, have handed her critics the ammunition they needed. And that brings us to the shift, because everything you have heard so far has been about culture and personality and rap beef, and none of that is actually the real story. The real story is about the business. And once you see the business, you cannot unsee it. Here is where the whole conversation changes, because up until this point we have been talking about a rap beef, and rap beefs are entertainment. Rap beefs are content. Rap beefs get views and comments and shares, and they move the needle for a week and then they die. But what is actually happening to Claressa Shields is not a rap beef. What is actually happening to Claressa Shields is a business collapse, and the diss tracks are a symptom, not the disease. Let me walk you through 3 separate systemic angles, and when you see them laid on top of each other, you are going to understand why the people I have talked to who work in the promotional side of boxing have started using a very specific word to describe what August 15th is going to look like, and that word is soft. Angle number 1 is the fight card economy. Women's boxing in 2026 is at a genuinely historic moment. DAZN has invested heavily in the women's product. Network money is flowing in ways that would have been unthinkable 5 years ago, and the pay-per-view ceiling for female main events has finally broken. But that ceiling only stays broken if the top of the card can carry the weight. When Claressa Shields sells a fight, she is not just selling a fight, she is selling a proof of concept to every network executive who is deciding whether to greenlight the next generation of female main events. When she underdelivers on ticket sales, when she underdelivers on subscriber lifts, when she underdelivers on social engagement metrics, she is not just losing money for herself. She is losing leverage for every single female fighter who is going to get a bigger bag next year because of the platform she was supposed to have built. And the metrics right now, 3 weeks out, are ugly. State Farm Arena is a big building. Filling it is not automatic. Filling it with a promotional campaign that is dominated by diss track drama instead of fight promotion is going to require the kind of last-minute walk-up buying that a mature promotion never wants to rely on. Angle number 2 is the promoter relationship. In boxing, the promoter-fighter relationship is a marriage. When the marriage is healthy, the promoter absorbs the noise and lets the fighter fight. When the marriage is strained, the promoter starts leaking. Look at the coverage of Claressa's recent promotional activity and ask yourself a question. Who is doing the heavy lifting to sell this fight? Is it her promoter putting up billboards and buying ad slots? Is it her promoter arranging network sit-downs and podcast appearances that are actually about the fight? Or is it Claressa herself, on her own social media, trying to hold the whole thing up with makeover posts and reactive content? Because when a promoter goes quiet 3 weeks out from a title fight, that is not an accident. That is a choice. That is a promoter who has looked at the run-up and decided that the cost of association is starting to exceed the benefit. And once a promoter reaches that internal conclusion, the fighter is on a clock, whether the fighter knows it or not. Angle number 3 is the endorsement pipeline, and this is the one that the AI Remy Ma track actually addressed directly, and I want you to notice how sharp that was. The AI bars specifically mentioned that Claressa cannot sell a sneaker, cannot sell a soda, that modeling agencies look at her with regret, that she has patches on her trunks, because the real endorsement money is not there. Whoever wrote those bars, human or machine, was pulling from public information about the endorsement landscape. Claressa Shields, despite being a 2-time Olympic gold medalist and an undisputed champion in multiple weight classes, has never converted her athletic accomplishments into the kind of major national endorsement portfolio that a comparable male fighter or a comparable female athlete in another sport would have generated. Why not? That is the question. And the answer, according to the sports marketing people who talk about this stuff, is that endorsement deals are not just about talent. They're about brand safety. They're about whether the athlete is somebody a corporation wants standing next to their logo. And every diss track, every makeover post, every cease and desist letter, every public feud with a rap veteran, every AI-generated takedown that goes viral, is a data point in a spreadsheet at a marketing agency that is deciding whether Claressa Shields is a name they want to put on a deck. And right now, the spreadsheet is not moving in her direction. Those 3 angles, the fight card economy, the promoter relationship, and the endorsement pipeline, are not separate stories. They're the same story, told from 3 different rooms. And the story is that the business infrastructure underneath the Claressa Shields brand is quietly, methodically, dispassionately being dismantled by the exact behaviors that Claressa herself thinks are building her profile. She thinks she is being a baddie. The industry thinks she is being a liability. And in a business that runs on cold math, the industry always wins that argument. Now here comes the part that I have been holding back, because I wanted to make sure you had the full picture before I said it out loud, and here it is, plainly, with no dressing on it. Claressa Shields is not losing a rap beef. Claressa Shields is losing her career in slow motion on our timelines, and the AI Remy Ma track is the moment the culture put a headstone on it. That is what that track represents. It is not a diss. It is a eulogy delivered by a machine because no human artist wanted to spend the studio time on it. Think about the actual mechanics of what happened here. Somebody, whoever they are, decided that the return on investment for a real Remy Ma Diss track was not high enough to be worth Remy's actual studio time, actual engineering costs, actual promotional push. So they took a shortcut. They cloned the voice. They generated the lyrics. They pushed it out. And it landed harder than any of the human diss records that have been aimed at Claressa this cycle. Do you understand what that means? It means that in the current market, a machine impersonation of a rap veteran is a more valuable commodity than a Claressa Shields response record. That is the market speaking. That is capitalism speaking. That is the ecosystem telling you, in the coldest possible language, where Claressa Shields is on the food chain right now. And the specific bars that the AI chose to hit are the ones that reveal exactly what the culture has decided about her. It went at her endorsements. It went at her aesthetics. It went at her jawline. It went at the fact that she started copying other women's styles once she realized her own presentation was not moving units. Every one of those shots was aimed at a specific piece of her public brand infrastructure, and every one of them landed because every one of them was already what people were saying in private. The AI did not invent the narrative. The AI just distributed it. And this is where the truth bomb has to be dropped in full, because I've been dancing around it, and I do not want to dance around it anymore. The reason this is happening 3 weeks before her fight is not a coincidence. This is what a smear cycle looks like when it is timed to a competitive event. Somebody, somewhere, wants Claressa Shields to walk into State Farm Arena on August 15th with her confidence damaged, her focus split, her promotional runway wasted, and her mental clock stuck on rap beef instead of on Kaye Scott's right hand. And whether that somebody is a coordinated group, an angry ex-associate, a rival promotional entity, or just the organic weight of a culture that has decided it is time for her reign to end, the effect is the same. The distraction is the point. The AI track is the point. The Geisha 305 record is the point. The cease and desist backfire is the point. Every single piece of this is designed, whether consciously or unconsciously, to make sure that the fighter who steps into the ring on August 15th is not the fighter who won 2 Olympic gold medals. It is a different fighter. It is a distracted fighter. It is a fighter whose team is spending time on rap beef lawyers instead of on strength and conditioning coaches. And if Kaye Scott and her team have been paying any attention at all, and I promise you, they are looking at this exact situation and they are grinning. Because they know that the version of Claressa Shields that shows up on fight night is not going to be the champion they were originally scheduled to fight. It is going to be a version of her that has spent the last 4 weeks defending her fingernails on Instagram instead of defending against a right hook in the gym. That is the truth bomb. This is not entertainment. This is sabotage, whether it is external or self-inflicted, and it is happening in real time, and the fight is in 21 days, and the champion is losing the war before the first bell has even rung. And here is where the story turns, because in every video like this, there has to be a moment where we stop talking about the fall and we start talking about the rise, because the culture does not just punish, the culture also rewards. And the people who are doing this the right way, quietly, without drama, without diss tracks, without cease and desist letters, without AI beefs, are the ones who are going to inherit the space that is being vacated. Kaye Scott is in Australia right now, running her miles, hitting her mitts, showing up to her media obligations, letting her promoter promote, letting her camp handle the noise, and preparing to walk into State Farm Arena on August 15th as the challenger with absolutely nothing to lose and a champion whose focus is fractured. That is the position every challenger dreams of. Alycia Baumgardner is out here working on television projects, letting Claressa's diss track die on its own, refusing to give oxygen to a fight she does not need to win because the silence is already winning it for her. That is what maturity looks like in a public feud. Remy Ma, the actual human Remy Ma, has not had to lift a finger in this cycle because the culture is doing her work for her. That is what earned respect gets you. And every single one of those women, in their own way, is a demonstration of the same principle, which is that the long game always beats the short game. The people who put in the work, who show up to the obligations, who let their craft do the talking, who do not chase press for the sake of press, who do not confuse being famous with being great, are the people who are still standing when the dust clears. And Claressa Shields, for all her talent, for all her medals, for all her legitimate accomplishments in the ring, has fundamentally lost sight of that principle, and the culture is course-correcting her whether she wants to be course-corrected or not. One fighter makes music that gets clowned by artificial intelligence. Another fighter makes fights that get respected by everybody who watches the sport seriously. That is the entire story in one sentence, and you can play that sentence back to yourself every time you see another diss track drop this week. The evidence in this video, from the surface to the culture to the business to the truth bomb, all points to the same conclusion, which is that the sport is bigger than any one champion, and when a champion forgets that, the sport reminds them. The reminder is happening right now. The reminder is called August 15th. And whatever happens in that ring, we are going to be here to break down every second of it with the same receipts, the same evidence, and the same commitment to telling you the actual story instead of the algorithm's version of it. The right people are going to end up in the right positions. They always do. The evidence always wins in the end. This is only the start of what is about to happen in the next 3 weeks, and I need you to be subscribed right now if you want to see every piece of it as it drops. Because there are 2 specific developments I am watching that are going to break wide open before fight night. Development number 1 is the response record situation. There is no way this ends without either Claressa Shields or somebody in her camp trying to fire back at the AI Remy Ma track, and the moment they do, we are going to be here to break down every bar, every quote, every reaction, and every business implication of what that response actually means for the promotional runway into August 15th. Development number 2 is the ticket sales and pay-per-view pre-buy data that is going to start leaking out of DAZN in the next 10 to 14 days. Because that data is going to tell us definitively whether the diss track cycle has damaged the actual commercial performance of the fight or whether Claressa's core audience is going to show up regardless. Either way, that number is a story, and I am going to be the first one breaking it down for you when it drops. So hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and let me know in the comments which of those 2 stories you want covered first when they hit. And before you click off, I need to point you to the next video you should be watching, because there is a specific angle to this entire situation that I did not have time to unpack fully today, and it is the one that ties everything together. The next video I am dropping is about the promoter's exit strategy, the specific contractual mechanisms that promoters use to quietly distance themselves from a fighter whose brand is collapsing, the historical examples of when this has happened before in boxing, and the very real possibility that the person who signed Claressa Shields to her current deal is already, right now, this week, having conversations about what the post-August 15 relationship is going to look like regardless of the outcome in the ring. That video is going to name names, break down contract structures, and give you a look at the business side of boxing that most fans never get to see. Click it as soon as this one ends. You are not going to want to miss what is in it.